This podcast is hosted by Buzzsprout. Podcasting isn't hard when you have the right partners. The team at Buzzsprout is passionate about helping you succeed. Join over 100,000 podcasters already using Buzzsprout to get their message to the world. If you want an upgrade, Buzzsprout has tons of guides to help you find exactly what you need. We use Buzzsprout and it's a game changer for us. An all-new analytics system helps us track who's listening to our show and where they're listening to it. If you'd like to use Buzzsprout as well, follow the link in our show notes to buzzsprout.com. And while you're there, let them know that Films and Fermentation sent you.
Hi, I'm Chris.
And I'm Deb.
And we host a pretty fun podcast called Today We Laughed and Learned. You know, this is where we discuss all the things we should have learned, but, well, never did. And we have quite a few laughs along the way.
Today we laughed and learned with Chris and Deb.
We're curious about everything. Experts on nothing.
Come find us wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey everybody, welcome to Films and Fermentation. Tonight we are recording episode 120. That's right, we are Films and Fermentation, a movie and alcohol podcast. I'm Leo.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Mike.
We're just three friends who like to talk shit about movies while getting shit-faced. In this episode 120, we're doing a blue-collar movie tour. That doesn't mean we're looking at the stand-up comedy specials starring Jeff Foxworthy and Larry the Cable Guy. We are looking at actual films that involve blue-collar jobs. We're going to look at the portrayal of blue-collar workers in movies. We are recording this the week of Labor Day, so this is why we decided to celebrate the backbone of America, the blue-collar worker. Don't forget to drop us an email at filmsandfermentation@gmail.com or visit linktree.com/filmsandfermentation. Find all of our social media and podcast links. Become a part of the Films and Fermentation family by supporting us on Patreon or buying some of our merchandise at teespring.com. What are we drinking tonight, gentlemen?
I'll go first.
Mike hasn't gone first in a while, so Mike go first.
I am drinking a blue collar beer. Well, not a blue collar beer. I'm drinking a beer because it's blue collar. But this is Southern Tears. It's in September too, so we're in the burr months now.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a burr beer. It is Southern Tears Caramel Pumpkin.
Ooh, that looks delicious.
That's the one I think we were having at the barbecue, right?
That's the one you drank the two at the barbecue. I had the one. This is the last one of the 4-pack.
I am looking forward to grabbing one of them.
Kev, we were only about there for like an hour. I had a Mike's Hard Black Cherry, followed by two of those pumpkins, which are 9.0 ABV.
Oh my god!
It's 8.6% alcohol by volume.
So I had two of those, and then I had Then I had like a lager or something after that. I was feeling pretty good.
You had the Oktoberfest, which was 6%.
So I was feeling pretty good that afternoon.
Yeah,
Nice.
I did the same thing tonight. I said, what's more blue collar than beer? And I scrounged through my fridge to try to find the most blue collar beer that I have, which is hard since it's mostly craft beers. But I did find a couple bottles of Sam Adams Boston Lager, original lager.
Nice.
And I figured that's probably about as blue collar as I have in my fridge. And I'm drinking it out of my Sam Adams cup that I got from the Sam Adams tour that Kevin and I went to.
Right.
Yeah, because I wasn't going to go out and just buy one Pepsi Blue Ribbon for the night.
Yeah.
So.
But if you did, you'd
You
have
get
to
that
drink
for a
it out
quarter,
of you have to drink it out of a brown paper bag.
Yeah, that's Colt 45.
No,
That's a 40.
It's a 40, yeah.
That's a 40 Colt 45.
There was a Pabst Blue Ribbon used to be served at the Brick House in a small brown paper bag because it was the cheapest beer, and they would just put it out on the table that way. So to look, indiscreet. Anyway, but obviously everybody knew what you were drinking because it was in a brown paper bag.
We had a bar in South Philly called the name of the bar was actually the Dive Bar. And on happy hour, you can get a shot and a PBR for $2.
Wow.
Wow. Paying for the shot, get the beer for free.
Get the beer for free. Kev, what are you drinking?
Drop a 10 and be fucked up.
Oh, shit.
I too, gentlemen, have gone into the fridge to pull out what beers I could find, and I'm still scrounging the bottom of my summer beers. So, though this is not a summer beer, my Corona Premier is a summer beer. This is the last one I have of that. But obviously, you guys know I usually consume 2 a show. And after this, I'm moving into the Leinenkugel's Snowdrift Vanilla Porter. I'm going to say this probably came out of one of Benash's craft beer mystery packs.
Because it sounds like a winter beer.
Right. Oh, is that the born on date or the sell by date? I could see why it was in one. So you guys want to take a guess at the date?
Yes, well, I'm going to say if you're saying it's either the born on but you were worried about both dates, which tells me it doesn't matter if it's the born on or drink by because they're both pretty old at this point. I'm going to go with sometime in 2022.
No. I'm going to go like 2020.
Mike, you got it, man.
Wow.
March 9th, 2020.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
That's a pandemic beer.
Yeah.
Just because I'm looking at mine, it says Best Buy 2025, and I bought it this year. It gives you 2 years.
And I'm curious mine now because I found this buried in the back of the fridge. So I don't even know.
A lot of them don't have a Best Buy. This has a
born on date.
Born on date.
I
just kind of look to see if it's settled or not. Oh, settled.
Mine isn't too bad. Mine's is like December 2023, so I had stopped a couple months.
Well, look, it's in a dark bottle. It's a dark beer. I'm sure it's fine. It wouldn't have gone bad after 3 years.
It's pandemic beer. It was in quarantine.
That's right.
Anything happened this week, Mike?
No, nothing happened.
Nothing happened at all.
This week in film history.
You should save that for a future episode so you can like fuck me over. Feel like no, nothing happened this week. Be like, what? Okay. So go ahead.
In 1935, Steamboat Around the Bend, film directed by John Ford, starring Will Rogers, released weeks after Rogers' death.
So I looked this up because I've never heard of the film, and I'm like, well, I like John Ford. 1935 seemed pretty early, so I was curious to see when his career started, and I was like, Jesus Christ. His first movie, John Ford's first film, was called The Tornado. It was a short film that he directed in 1917.
Wow.
And then his final film that he directed came out in 1976.
Yeah.
So that's 59 years of directing. So this movie here was kind of like the beginning of the middle.
His directorial debut, he was 10.
Yeah. 1917. Kev, why don't you take that second one?
Well, really quick, Steamboat Around the World. Did that have Pete and
No, Steamboat Around the Bend.
Around the bend.
The other one is Steamboat. You're talking about Steamboat Willie.
That's right.
Actually, at first, that's what I thought you had on there because I didn't read it like right away. I just saw the word Steamboat and I was like, oh, he's got a Disney fact. And then I read it again later and I was like, wait a minute. So, Kev, go ahead, take the second one.
So in 1960, nationwide release in the U.S. Release U.S. of Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, starring Anthony Perkins and Janet Leigh, mother of Jamie Lee Curtis.
Mm-hmm. A movie that we have talked about a few times on a couple different episodes. I think we talked about it for well, we did it on the Fourth Wall Breaks. because of the final scene, and we talked about it on. I'm sure we've talked about it on like a horror movie episode at some point or another too. We also talked about Alfred Hitchcock way back when. So go ahead, Mike. Take the next one.
Well, considering today is Star Trek Day,
Yes, sir.
this one actually happened today. 1966, Star Trek premieres on NBC TV, starring William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy. So we were early for our Star Trek episode.
So yeah, they've been promoting it on Paramount Plus a lot. Star Trek Day, because they're doing like a marathon thing or something. And last night I watched. I did it again. I was like, I should sit down and watch a couple episodes of Picard. So I went back and watched Next Generation again. And I watched an episode from season 1 because I had hardly ever watched season 1.
Oh.
And I decided to watch this one because of something I saw on the internet the other day. The episode was called Conspiracy. And it involved like these little creatures that took over the bodies of all these captains and admirals and stuff. Had the head exploding at the end.
Yes.
Yeah, we talked about it because of how gruesome it was at the end when the guy explodes.
Yeah.
And the thing that I had a question about it at the end was they never came back. Like they left it with a cliffhanger. Like,
gentlemen, there were 3 seasons of Picard, and don't get me wrong, I enjoyed them, right? But they reuse, like, it's like, I think I mentioned this before, the Borg is done to death. Like you burp out anything Star Trek and the Borg comes out. This could have been something they revisited, and man, would that have tied the first season and the end of Picard together nicely, wouldn't it?
It would have been a cool tie-in because it's such an open-ended ending, and I was like,
yeah, it's like it was sending a signal out to another planet about they are ready.
It was sending a beacon to Earth.
Yeah,
we're from Earth or something like that. I was like, Jesus, man, that's such an open-ended episode.
Let me give you some good feelings about a Star Trek series. Again, I'm going to go Strange New Worlds. They have a lot about the Gorn in it. Oh my God, the Gorn is.
I don't want to see the Gorn unless it's a guy in a rubber costume, though. I don't want any CGI.
No. The first time they talk about it, you don't see him. The second time, you see how the babies come out of, or pretty much aliens shooting out of people's bodies, and juveniles, which are still kind of wild. Yeah, they're not going to the Borg shit. They're going to the Gorn.
Yeah, I definitely got to check it out.
They started using the Gorn in the 1980s TV series V. Wasn't that the whole thing? Like the Gorn had come to Earth.
V. Ted Danson.
Hey, don't mess with V. I like V.
I did too. The original V. I liked it too. Yeah.
I got it on DVD.
Next one we got here, 1984, Amadeus, from the play by Peter Shaffer, directed by Milos Forman and starring Tom Hulce as Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart and F. Murray Abraham as Antonio Salieri. Premieres in Los Angeles. It wins the Academy Award for Best Picture in 1985 and Best Acting nomination or winner, F. Murray Abraham, also 1985.
Whoa. Why you got to be saying fuck Murray Abraham?
Yeah, F. Murray Abraham.
F. Murray Abraham.
It's funny
because Abraham.
So I always look it up when that shit comes up, and it was a rough year for the Oscars Best Picture that year. The nominees were Amadeus, A Soldier's Story, The Killing Fields, Places in the Heart, and A Passage to India.
Wow,
Jesus.
Very weak year. So that's kind of why that won. And it's weird that he won for Best Actor playing Salieri, whereas the actor Tom Hulce, who played the titular character Amadeus, was also nominated but lost. So kind of interesting, I thought. And then the last one you got there, Mike.
In 2010, The King's Speech, directed by Tom Hopper, starring Colin Firth and Jeffrey Rush, premieres in the Telluride Film Festival Best Picture in 2011.
That's a great movie.
I like The King's Speech. I think it's a really good movie. I don't think it should have won the Oscar for Best Picture. I have to bring it up because, again, I looked this up as well. That year was another 10-movie year. And, Kev, I think you'll agree with me like you did last week's episode. When I read off the nominees, there's probably going to be at least 2 that probably should have won over The King's Speech.
Okay.
So it's The King's Speech, Black Swan, The Fighter, The Social Network, True Grit, 127 Hours, Inception, The Kids Are All Right, Toy Story 3, and Winter's Bone.
Wow, man,
That is a rough year.
That's a rough year for good reasons. I mean, those are all,
Now, I love Toy Story 3, but it had already won the Oscar for animated film, so it didn't need to win Best Picture.
No.
I love Inception.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's Nolan's best picture, but I like Inception.
Mm-hmm.
I think it came down to, personally, I thought it should have come down to either True Grit
or Black Swan
or The Social Network.
Oh, I mean, I did like The Social Network too. Black Swan was really well done though.
For True Grit, a remake is really hard to get
It got the nomination, which is pretty good. So
to get the win,
it was done really well for a Coen movie.
It's not as like quirky as some of their other films tend to be.
I would have brought it down to either The Social Network or Black Swan. Black Swan was good. Creepy, man. I mean,
I really think The Social Network probably should have won that year. Looking back on it, it's a movie that still kind of relevant.
Yeah,
I do like The King's Speech. I think it's an entertaining film, but and Colin Firth won Best Actor that year for King's Speech, beating out Javier Bardem for Beautiful, Jesse Eisenberg for The Social Network, Jeff Bridges for True Grit, and James Franco for 127 Hours. I think he was the best choice for the Oscar for Best Actor because he is pretty amazing in that film, in The King's Speech. But I think another film should have gotten the Best Picture nod.
I think just having to create a stutter and have that as part of your character, I mean, intentionally giving yourself a speech impediment's got to be grueling,
Yeah, and it was, and it is a really well done simulation of that speech impediment,
Yeah.
Mike, you have any beer or craft destinations for us tonight?
I do. This is not a must-try beer, but it works for tonight. This is Workers' Comp Farmhouse Ale from Two Roads Brewing Company, Stratford, Connecticut. There's a lot of directions a saison can go. It can be a pale, dark, light, strong, spicy, or clean. This one expresses itself as a light orange, 4.8% alcohol by volume, brewed with bubblegum, clove, and banana flavors. Flavors really open the palate with grass, wet wheat, and a slight tartness and plum fruitiness. There you go.
I like the name of the beer. I think it's a cool name, and I think it works for what we're doing tonight. But banana, clove, and bubblegum doesn't scream worker comp to me.
No,
it screams like.
After you drink it, you may get.
That sounds like a carnival or something,
Oh, it's time for Synopsis according to Glip. Brought to you by Newsly. Newsly.me is an all-in-one audio super app for iOS and Android that reads the news to you in a natural human voice. Stop scrolling. Start listening. Go to Newsly.me today and use the promo code ANFORMED to get the first month premium subscription for free. So, according to our recording program, Glip, our synopsis for last week's episode, which was, what did we do last week, guys? Why I always have so much trouble remembering what we did the week before?
We drink a lot.
I think I gotta stop drinking.
And what's the point? What's the purpose?
This is good promotion for the show, and we can't even remember what the hell we did. Let me.
Well, the synopsis doesn't say anything about what we talked about.
No.
So.
I know the synopsis doesn't help.
This was actors who crushed it during their debut.
Yeah, last week was all about the actors in the butt.
Yeah,
in the butt. Yeah,
in the butt.
They
so, Kevman and Mike discussed the McGregor clan in the Star Wars episodes. Kevman and Mike are discussing the Mandalorian and the Rebels. Leo is going to talk about the honorable mentions and the reason for the bleeding. I had a cut on my leg that I was talking about during the episode. Leo is discussing the actors who crushed it in their debuts and the caveat that they are only looking at movie actors. Kevman spoke about the big bad boy and said that it will mess them up pretty bad. Mike and Leo discussed the strawberry lemonade they got. The participants talked about the shallows.
I like how I got that one.
Leo is back from a short break and is staying with the bombshell apple cider because he killed the other one really quickly. Leo and Kevman discussed the romantic side of Galaxy Quest.
You got the shallow.
That was the best part of the synopsis.
What the hell did I talk about a big bad boy for?
So
That's
let's
what I
see. The McGregor clan thing was the meme we saw about how Ewan McGregor and his wife and uncle and all
It
are
was his
part of
wife,
Star
his
Wars.
daughter. It was his wife, his daughter, and his uncle. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the Rebels and Mandalorian were part of that discussion.
We were talking about
The
Ahsoka.
honorable mentions was the end of the episode. The bleeding thing was I had a cut on my leg. Actors who crushed in their debut was the episode. Kevman spoke about the big bad boy. I think it was the drink you had. It was called like the Big Boy or something like that.
Maybe.
Big Boy beer or some shit like that, and it was like really high APV.
Yeah. It was from Oscar Blues, I think.
Yeah. The strawberry lemonade was the strawberry lemonade Old Smoky bourbon, Old Smoky whiskey. We were talking about Star is Born at some point, and that's where the shallows came from. We came back from a short break, and I was drinking bombshell apple cider because I had already drank the one that I had earlier in the show. And I remember talking about Galaxy Quest, but I don't remember talking about the romantic side of it.
No.
So
hey,
that's
question though. Under last week, did we drop? Because I'm forgetting. Was Jennifer? Oh, come on, Kev. What's her name? Mystique and
Jennifer Lawrence.
Jennifer Lawrence. Yeah. Did we mention her for the Winter's Bone?
No, we didn't. She probably should have mentioned her. She was nominated for that.
Yeah.
We also didn't mention Jennifer Connelly, who made her debut in Labyrinth.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a few we missed. I'm sure. We usually do. We don't always get them all right.
When you had mentioned the Winter's Bone with
Best Picture,
Best Picture, that's what made me think of her.
She actually skins a squirrel in that film for real.
Isn't she from like Tennessee or Kentucky or someplace like that?
I don't know. I think she had to learn how to do it or something.
I think it was a course in her high school that she had to learn.
I put out a listener submission thing on Twitter earlier. I was watching Die Hard the other night, and I was wondering who people thought the smartest villain in cinema was, because I really think Hans Gruber, played by Alan Rickman, is one of the smartest villains in movies. Even though he doesn't win at the end, he's pretty brilliant. And I got a few replies on Twitter. Sean Faust said General Hummel, who is the Ed Harris character from The Rock.
Okay.
Has a pretty well thought out and calculated plan. He's not really a villain, just kind of somebody who goes out of his way, Let's Get Real on Twitter said Simon Gruber, Hans's brother, and the third Die Hard film, played by Jeremy Irons.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorites, the operative from Serenity, the Firefly film, played by Chiwetel Ejiofor. Very, very intelligent villain. But most people seem to really like my pick of Hans Gruber. He seems to be like the hands down guy.
What about Kaiser Sose?
Kaiser Sose is a great one. Yeah, it's a great one. Especially since I'm rewriting that script for a Pitch This podcast. So I don't know. It's like kind of putting you guys on the spot, but is there any other ones you can think of? Kaiser Sose is a good one.
Yeah.
This might be a topic for another episode at some point.
Yeah.
Smartest villains.
So, Palpatine, he was already thinking about cloning and everything.
Mm-hmm.
He played the whole Republic like a fiddle.
He orchestrated that whole thing, played the Republic like a fiddle, had his apprentice, and then even then when he had his backup plan, He
had his backup to the backup plan because he had his apprentice who got cut in half that he had.
Don't forget about the brilliance of Darth Jar Jar.
Yes. That's what we're talking about. It's actually Darth Jar Jar.
Yeah. He was behind the whole thing.
Palpatine. Somehow Palpatine, came back.
So we recently got a 5-star review on Apple, and I wanted to give a shout out to the person because they wrote us a very nice review. The reviewer is Kitty World. I don't know the person's real name. Their handle on iTunes is Kitty World, and they gave us a 5-star review and wrote, "It's like hanging out with your neighbors." Look, if I were a guy and my wife was upstairs gossiping and drinking wine, you can bet 100% I'd be down in the basement hanging with these guys having a cold one. But because these guys aren't my neighbors, I'll have to settle with listening to their podcasts. They're really passionate about their films and their fermentation, and really fun to listen to, too.
Nice.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to Kitty World on Apple Podcasts. I thought was one of our
Thank you, Kitty World.
nicer reviews. So I wanted to read that out for
Is
everybody.
it Kitty
Are you trying to say we have some bad reviews out there?
Kitty or is it Kitty Kitty?
It's actually, her handle is actually the $sign KITTY
Okay.
WORLD $sign.
Okay.
Kitty World.
Kitty World. Thank you,
So
Kitty World.
Thank you, Kitty World. We are going to take a short break, play a couple messages for you, and then we will be back with our main segment, the best portrayal of blue-collar jobs in cinema.
Hello, everybody. Let me ask you a question. When you were a kid, did you ever wonder what teachers talked about in the teacher's lounge?
You probably didn't miss much. It's usually boring stuff like grading papers, lesson planning, and then figuring out the new train schedule.
Train schedule?
Well, I teach in the city.
But sometimes, at one of the not-so-cool tables in the back of the teacher's lounge, you might find us, the Fandalorians, teachers by day, nerds by night.
My name is Mr. Richardson, and by day, Mr. McDonald, Mr. G, and I teach and inspire America's youth.
But by night, we debate, discuss, and argue about all things in the pop culture universe on our podcast.
We discuss all the biggest pop culture topics in the world, like Ozark, Stranger Things, The Marvelous Miss Maisel, Marvel, Star Wars, Top Gun Maverick, The Old Man, Bridgerton, you name it, we'll probably discuss it.
You guys watch Bridgerton?
Yo, season 1 of Bridgerton was awesome. You don't know what you're missing. Since we are teachers, you will always get a ton of background information about our topics and original teacher-themed segments, like our pop culture morning announcements, building meetings, and post-observation reviews of shows and movies. Oh, and arguing. You'll get lots of disagreements and arguing, like way more than I'm comfortable with.
You can find us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Just search for The Fandalorians, teachers by day, nerds by night.
Then join us every Monday as we look into the current state of fandom and pop culture.
Hey, look, the bell's about to ring. We need to head to the buses. Hopefully we'll see you guys soon.
Well, I mean, they're not going to see us because this is a podcast.
I know.
But they can't even see us when you think about it, so they won't see us either.
Oh my God, you know what I meant. It wasn't literal. Just ring the bell. Ring the bell.
The Fandalorians, teachers by day, nerds by night. I hope you listen and subscribe to us soon.
I hate you guys.
Hey movie lovers, it's Jackson here from the Back to the Blockbuster podcast. If you've ever wanted to hear an amateur cinephile and an industry professional chat about film and television, then look no further, because every week my co-host Gaius and I, we bring you the latest industry news, break down the most recent trailers, try to beat the box office with our weekly predictions, and dive into our favorite movies on their anniversaries. And every second Friday, you can look forward to the Back to the Blockbuster spin-off, Deep Dives with Owen and Gaius, where the duo dissects a movie of their own choice. All this and more wherever you get your podcasts.
Well, we are back from our short break. Thank you for staying with us. I'm continuing my trek through the Sam Adams Boston Lager. Just poured myself a second one. Tonight's main segment is blue collar movies. We're going to look at the best portrayal of blue collar jobs in film, and on a scale of 1 to 5, rate how realistic we think the portrayal was, with 1 being least realistic and 5 being most realistic. We broke it down into a few different types of blue-collar jobs. This is, of course, not everything out there. There are millions of jobs out there that could be considered blue-collar.
Mm-hmm.
But we went with movies that involve unions, teachers, police, fire, paramedics, and other first responders, farmers, contractors, and skilled labor. And then our last category is blue collar comedies, because we did have to include a few of those for, you know.
Really? Teachers, they don't work all year. What are you talking about?
Dude, I work all year.
You chose to this time, though.
I work most of the summer. All right. So the first movie I have here the first category is films about the Union. And the first movie I have on the list is a movie called Blue Collar. It came out in 1978. I had never heard of this film until I started doing research for the episode. And I saw they came out in 1978 and was starred Harvey Keitel, Yaphet Kotto, and Richard Pryor. And I was like, that's an interesting cast. I thought at first maybe it was like a comedy since Richard Pryor was in it, but no, it was a straight up drama. And it was interesting to see Richard Pryor in a role where he was not the comedian. He was playing a pretty straight character. And for the most part, it was a pretty realistic film. It's about these three guys who work at a auto plant in Detroit. They're part of the auto plant union. There's a lot of scenes in it where they're at union meetings fighting with their union head because he's not doing his job, trying to get them what they need. That you see their daily struggle working on the floor, what their life is like outside of the auto plant where they like just hang out and drink all the time. You see their home troubles, their money troubles. It's it was a very realistic portrayal of a blue collar industry.
It reminds me. I'm sorry.
A really good movie. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say your description of it reminds me of, what was that Michael Keaton one? Wasn't that Gung Ho or?
Yeah, that was another one about the auto plant.
About the auto plant and the union, and yeah.
The issue in that one was that the plant was being sold to a Japanese company or something like that, and they were worried about their jobs. This was just focused on these guys, and it was a really good movie. And then it started a little crazy towards the end because the three main characters, decide they're going to rob the union office and steal their money to try to help pay their bills, and they end up breaking into the office and finding that there was only $600 in the safe. But when it gets reported on the news, the union said that they lost $10,000 so that they can get the $10,000 from the insurance.
The insurance, yeah.
And then when they go and they tell the union guys, no, we're the ones who broke in. We have the money. We also have a journal of all these like shady deals you've been doing. So if you don't give us the $10,000, we're going to report this to the news and all that. So then the union claims that it was actually $20,000 they lost. And it got a little like there were some like weird funny moments at that point, but then at the end it went really off the rails because now the end the union was like trying to kill them and all this shit. It was like,
well, that's because the union's run by the mob.
But it wasn't a mob union. That's what was the funny thing about it. There was no mob connections in this movie. It was a really good movie up until like the end. So I'll give it a rating since I'm the only one who saw this one. From a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being most realistic, I'm going to give it a 4 because it was a very realistic film up until like the end where things started to get a little like apeshit crazy. But otherwise, great performance from Harvey Keitel, who's usually pretty great, and Yaphet Kotto, and interesting turn to see Richard Pryor playing a dramatic role.
Okay.
So it was Blue Collar, came out in 1978. Next one on the list is Norma Ray, which starred Sally Field.
Bridget or Gidget.
Gidget. This is the one.
The Flying Nun.
Yeah. She won 2 Oscars. One of them was for this film. And I believe this is the film where she gave her favorite Oscar, her famous Oscar speech where she said that, yeah, you like me, you really like me. I haven't seen this movie in a long time. This came out in 1979.
It's forever.
Yeah, it's a young single mother, textile worker, agrees to help unionize her mill despite the problems and dangers involved. So this one is about like forming a union. Like a lot of her family before her, Norma Ray works at the local textile mill where the pay is hardly commensurate with the long hours and lousy working conditions. But after hearing a rousing speech by labor activist Rubin, Norma is inspired to rally her fellow workers behind the cause of unionism. Her decision rankles the family, especially her fiancé Sonny, and provokes no shortage of contempt from her employers. Now, what I remember about it from seeing it a long time ago, that it was a pretty gritty portrayal of what it's like to try to form a union and how it can strain relationships among employers and things like that. So I'm going to probably, just because I don't remember too well, I haven't seen it in a while, I'm probably going to throw a 4 out on this one, but I feel like it's got the potential to be a 5 for being a fairly realistic film. Now, I know
with 4.
Yeah, I know you guys have seen the next one.
I've seen it.
The next one on my list.
Actually, no.
You have not seen Newsies? I'm surprised you have not seen Newsies.
It's one of Adrian's favorites, and I've never seen it.
I have a confession to make as well.
You have never seen it?
I've never
Jesus
seen
Christ.
it. Megan says it's one of her favorite movies.
I should have your wives on then, since none of you have seen any of the movies that I listed.
I've seen Norma Ray once.
You guys
That's
are
not
really
Sally
holding your
Field-
own in this movie podcast right
Sally Field was hot in 1979.
You've only until this recently, you've only saw 2 of the 3 movies that we're talking about so far.
Well, I've seen Newsies. I've seen Blue Collar. I saw Norma Ray. I've seen Newsies. I can tell you that I've seen every film that I listed on this panel here.
You wouldn't watch Blue Collar because you put it on the list.
Well, the thing is, when I was researching blue collar movies, it kept popping up because the film's called Blue Collar. And when I read up on it, I was like, that sounds pretty interesting. So I watched it for the episode tonight. But I thought of all the things in the union category, you guys would have seen Newsies at least.
No. I mean, I'm good with the last one in the union category.
Oh my God! Go get Megan and Adrian. Put them on for a minute. So Newsies is a musical film based on the New York City newsboy strike of 1899, when young newspaper sellers, exploited beyond reason by their bosses, set out to enact change and are met by the ruthlessness of big business as a group of young newspaper boys, played by a very young Christian Bale, as well as a very young Max Casella and Gabriel Damon and these other actors who are older actors now. It's a musical, so I would give it probably a 3 for realism, just because of the musical aspect of it.
Well, it's
but
also Disney.
It's also Disney, but it's also based on a true event. This actually happened, and I think they were successful in unionizing as well.
Yeah.
Also stars Anne Margaret, Robert Duvall, and Bill Pullman. So, guys, should we keep going? Because I don't know if I'm going to keep running it into this. I hope you've seen some of the other films I have here.
I'm loading Newsies up on Disney Plus right now. I'll watch it while you continue. Okay?
Hold on, let me
There's
pause
2
it.
versions on Disney Plus.
Yeah,
there's
a stage version too.
Is there a big difference? Can I just comment on the content?
Just look for the one with Christian Bale.
Are they still?
Just make sure you get the one that's Christian Bale.
Hold on, I'm gonna pause the episode. You guys go watch Newsies, and then we'll come back. And we're back. What did you guys think?
Man, that was amazing!
Wow.
I can't believe it. Oh, and the jumping and the dancing and the newspapers flying everywhere. Extra.
Read all
Actually, it
about
sounds like you didn't watch it, because there was a scene that's just like that.
Yeah, there is a scene just like that.
I must have
I've
seen
seen that
commercial or
scene.
something.
It's a Disney
Extra,
musical. Somebody's going to be
extra.
jumping across the screen at some point. All right. On the Waterfront is the next one I have. I know we've talked about this one a few times before. It's a classic. It's an Academy Award-winning film. Stars Marlon Brando. This is
He's
the
a ferry
famous
worker, isn't he?
He's a ferry worker working for the union. But it's a mob-run union, so he also has dealings with the mob. He used to be a prize fighter, but started taking falls for money. So the term they use for that is a palooka, and that's where we get that famous speech from him.
Could
I
have been somebody.
could have been somebody, could have been a
Could have
contender.
been a contender.
So
Bet
an
I'm nobody.
ex-prize fighter turned New Jersey longshoreman struggles to stand up to his corrupt union bosses, which includes his older brother. He starts to connect with the grieving sister of one of the syndicate's victims. Stars Marlon Brando, Carl Malden, Lee J. Cobb, Rob Steiger, and Eve Marie Saint in her first role. Oscar winner for Best Picture. Oscar winner for Marlon Brando for Best Actor. Classic film. And given that the time period it takes place in, there was a lot of that union mob connected corruption, especially in jobs like waterfront jobs. I give On the Waterfront 5 for realism.
5.
Yeah.
All right. We actually agreed on one because we actually saw this together. The next one I have on here is, I put the 2 movies down here because they're both about the same thing, just kind of told differently. One is Hoffa, starring
Right.
Jack Nicholson and Danny DeVito. And the other is The Irishman, starring Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci. And it's a Martin Scorsese film. But both deal with Hoffa and his rise to power as head of one of the most powerful labor unions in the country, and what happens to him because of it.
He sleeps with the fishes.
Yeah,
He
pretty
becomes
much.
part of the structural stability of a building somewhere.
And it's a lot of it is, and this is why a lot of these unions, especially these like blue collar unions like this, get that reputation for being like involved with the mob, and it's because he was involved with the mob, Jimmy Hoffa.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he's buried under the 50-yard line at Giant Stadium.
No, I thought when they remade Giant Stadium and they found out he wasn't.
Yeah. Now, if you want to find out where he's,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
You want to find out where he's buried, you got to watch Bruce Almighty with Jim Carrey because he finds the body.
Filing cabinet. Do we treat these separately, like Pacino's version of Hoffa versus Nicholson's version of Hoffa?
Yeah, I'm
How do you
kind
want
of
to
treating them.
approach these?
I'm treating them separately because I think that The Irishman spends more time talking about that connection between Hoffa and the mob, and whereas Hoffa, it spends more time on Jimmy Hoffa himself. He's the main character, whereas The Irishman, it's the ancillary characters.
Yeah,
and
it's the hitman. It's Robert De Niro's character.
I mean, Hoffa, I thought was a good film. It's written by David Mamet, so it's got pretty good dialogue in it. Jack Nicholson's kind of interesting in the role, but he's basically Jack Nicholson with a nose prosthetic. And Danny DeVito plays a person who didn't exist.
Like he's a figment of Hoffa's imagination?
Well, he's a character that's sort of like a combination of a bunch of people that existed.
Oh, I see.
So if you took like De Niro's character and Pesci's character and The Irishman, kind of combine them together with a few other people, you get the Danny DeVito character. So in terms of realism, go ahead.
I was just going to say, did DiCaprio play Hoffa as well?
DiCaprio?
Yeah.
Not that I know of.
I'm looking it up now. You go ahead. Talk amongst yourselves, gentlemen.
Well, I was going to say, in terms of realism, I don't think Hoffa is as realistic as The Irishman is in terms of its portrayal of the Union.
And I think they use more real people in The Irishman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Hoffa was sort of, that Hollywood version of true events. I mean, not that The Irishman isn't either, but I think it was also directed by Danny DeVito as one of his first times directing a film. The Irishman, even though it's Hollywood realism, I think because Scorsese filmed it in conjunction with Netflix, he had a little bit more freedom to do what he wanted with the story.
Yes.
So Hoffa, I would give
3
maybe. Irishman, maybe a 4, because there are some embellished moments, obviously.
Yeah, of course.
It's a little long too. A little long in the.
Little long. I watched it over 4 days. I treated it like a Netflix series. I watched like an hour
if
each
you
day.
treat it like a Netflix series, you should have binged it in a day.
Yeah, right. I treated it like it was like it was like a Tuesday release on Disney Plus or something.
I apologize, gentlemen. He did not play Hoffa. He played Hoover. Get the two.
Yeah, he was in He played J. Edgar Hoover in J. Edgar.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one I knew about. I had no idea if he played Hoffa or not. The next category I have here is films about teachers. Despite what Mike has to say about the noble profession that Kevin and I have dedicated our lives to, teachers are blue-collar workers. They don't make a lot of money. They work very hard. And yes, we do work in the summertime.
Yes, we do.
Well, some of you do.
Most of us.
I don't think Kevin worked all summer.
Kevin was a dog sitter.
Babysitting your dog does not count as working.
Well, what about mowing the lawn and cleaning the pool?
I do that.
Right.
I do that all the time too.
So the first one I have for the teacher films is Stand and Deliver.
What is Cagulas?
Is this Edward James Olmos?
This is
Yes,
Edward
it
James
is.
Almost and good old LDP, Lou Diamond Phillips.
Mm-hmm.
What is Cagulas? It's
Stand
calculus.
and Deliver. Calculus. The story of
Loosely based
ahead.
on a true story.
well, they're all loosely based on true stories.
Mm-hmm.
Story of Jamie Escalante, a high school teacher who successfully inspired his dropout-prone students to learn calculus.
And
I
then
took
this was
calculus in high
remade.
school. I took calculus in high school, and I wasn't a low-income, high-risk student. I still had trouble with it.
And this was remade years later into Dangerous Minds, only from a writing
Yeah.
perspective.
Well, there was Dangerous Minds, which was Michelle Pfeiffer, and then
Mhm.
there was Freedom Writers with Hilary Swank, which is basically the same movie.
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a common trope in films, even though this one was based on a true story. Jamie Escalante.
This one felt more real than those two did.
This definitely felt real because it is, it's a portrayal of a particular demographic, because it's a
Yep.
teacher at a high school in a Hispanic neighborhood.
Mhm.
You have students
and all
in the. Go ahead, Mike.
and all the roadblocks he had to go through just to get him to teach the higher advanced math to these students.
Convinced that his students have potential, he adopts unconventional teaching methods to help gang members and no-hopers pass the rigorous advanced placement exam in calculus. I should have went to this school. I could have used help with the calculus.
And at the end, they all
Was this the one that took place in Camden? No.
Yeah.
That's the next
No,
movie. that
that's
we're
the
about
next
to talk-
one.
That's
Yeah,
the next movie we're about
This
to talk
one took place, I think, in LA.
about.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking at the tagline. At a tough school, someone has to take a stand, and someone did. Together, one teacher and one class proved to America they could stand and deliver.
I remember at the end, they thought they all cheated because they all got the same questions wrong. They all got taught the same way.
Yeah. Welcome to teaching. I'll give this a 5 because I feel that pain.
I give it a 4, 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
I would probably give it a 5. As a teacher, I feel the need
teacher.
to give it a 5. Yeah.
Anytime I watch a movie about teaching and I feel anxious watching it, I go, wow, this is
Mhm.
realistic. If I don't feel anxious,
Summer school in this too.
yeah, like if
Any of
I'm
the
watching
teachers?
Higher Learning with John Lovitz, I'm not anxious watching that film, so I'm not going to give that a 5. Oh, yeah, Summer School. 1.2 because of that guy that got stuck in the bathroom for 6 weeks getting a 90. Yeah, the next one is the one that takes place in Camden, New Jersey, and that is Lean on Me.
Lean on Me.
With
Joe Brown.
Morgan Freeman, Joe Brown.
Mm-hmm.
You used to call me Mr. Brown. Now you call me Batman.
Batman.
I'm Batman.
That's funny, though, because he would go on to play Lucius Fox instead. Dedicated but tyrannical, Joe Clark is appointed the principal of a decaying inner-city school he is determined to improve by any and all means.
Those inner city schools are still decaying.
Oh, yeah. Camden's still a show, but,
Yeah.
the guy tried.
He did. They wouldn't let him lock the doors to keep out the drug dealers.
Yeah.
You know?
Because that's a fire hazard the way they did it.
I mean, you look at one of the opening scenes of this film is him walking into the school and looking at all the graffiti on the walls and like the trash everywhere, and it looks like an abandoned building.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I don't know how realistic it is in that sense. That could be a little bit of Hollywood over dramatization, but anybody who's driven through, downtown Camden at night,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or during the day.
or during the day.
Do you think he actually took a student up to the roof and just said, "You wanted to jump? You go. You jump."
I think given where he was, principal, and the time period this takes place in, you probably could have done anything you wanted. Got away with it.
I give this
Arrogant.
a 5.
You give this a 5. I give this probably like a 4.
I give it a 4.
An arrogant, unorthodox teacher returns his principal to the idyllic high school from which he had earlier been fired to find it a den of drug abuse, gang violence, and urban despair. Eventually, he is successful, but unorthodox methods lead to a clash with city officials that threaten to undo all his efforts, based on a true story. Loosely based. Which takes us to the next one, Dead Poet Society. I struggled with this one
I thought
because
Teachers was next.
Oh, Teachers. Well, I'm gonna go to Dead Poet Society. I'll go back to that one. I struggled with Dead Poet Society putting this on here. I thought, okay, yeah, it's a movie about teachers, but they're at a boarding school, so I'm not quite sure how blue collar this is. So I love Dead Poets, but I think I'm gonna take that one off the list, and we'll go to Teachers instead. Teachers, I've definitely talked about this before. It's a movie from I think it's either the late 70s or early 80s. This came out 1984. It stars Nick Nolte, Joe Beth Williams, Judd Hirsch, Ralph Macchio, Richard Mulligan, and a bunch of other people. And it's Crispin Glover's in it, Morgan Freeman's in it. Laura Dern plays one of the students in the school. She's very young in this film.
Ralph Macchio was about 50 in that
Oh,
film.
yeah.
Right?
Ralph Macchio was playing a 16-year-old, but he was about 37.
Yeah, he was probably older than the actual teacher that was teaching him.
A well-meaning but burned-out high school teacher tries to maintain order against the backdrop of a pending lawsuit against his school district. When it comes to light, they gave a diploma to an illiterate student. That's realistic right there to me, giving a diploma to an illiterate student. You know, you get
No Child Left Behind, right?
You get kids pushed through all the time.
Yep.
I'm not going to say this is the greatest movie ever. It's entertaining. As a teacher, I find it entertaining because the cast of teachers in the film are so unique and remind me of a lot of people I've worked with over the years.
I've not seen this one, but your description, I guess they're talking about Nick Nolte as being burnout is like 100% true.
Oh yeah. Like, so he's a teacher who's burnt out, but he's really trying still. He's friends with, or he's not friends with, but he's like, he's kind of friendly with Ralph Macchio's character, who's like a punk and cuts school all the time. And he's always trying to like help the kid like do better. Judd Hirsch is the assistant principal, who's like kind of fed up with everything.
Yeah, I have seen this one.
Richard Mulligan's the best character in the film. He joins the school as a history teacher and ends up having the most popular, successful class of anybody in the school, until the people from the insane asylum come to take him away because he escaped.
That seems on par. You know, that
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Laura Dern plays a student who's having an affair with the gym teacher.
Oh, wow.
It's like, it's a crazy, crazy film. It's not based on anything like true or whatever. It's supposed to show just kind of like what the public school system is like in this inner city. I'd probably give it, as the one who's seen this one, I'd probably give this like a 3 for realism. It's got some pretty funny moments in it, but there are some things that are kind of over the top.
Wow, this movie also had Morgan Freeman in it too.
He's one of the young teachers in it.
Teacher movies.
There's a teacher in it they call Ditto, because all he does is copy papers and hand them out to the kids. And while the kids work on the worksheets, he sits at his desk and reads a newspaper the whole class. And he ends up dying at his chair, and nobody knows about it. Like, the kids don't know, because all they do is hand in the papers to the end of the class and leave. Nobody knows the guy's dead till like late that night when the overnight janitor's cleaning and finds his body. Next one I have here is Mr. Holland's Opus.
Oh, I like this one. My father calls it Mr. Opus. It's one of his favorite movies too.
He calls it Mr. Opus. Mr. Holland's Opus. It's this one. It grew on me. It took me a while to like this one. The frustrated composer finds fulfillment as a high school musical teacher. Glenn Holland, a musician and composer who takes a teaching job to pay the rent, while in his spare time he can strive to achieve his true goal, compose one memorable piece of music to leave his mark on the world. As Holland discovers, life is what happens to you while you're busy making other plans. And as the years unfold, the joy of sharing his contagious passion for music with his students becomes his new definition of success. The first time I saw it, I thought, man, this is a really hokey, like overly sentimental film.
Yes.
And then the second time I watched it, I was like, yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it was. He's really good in it. Richard Dreyfuss, like, he's really good. I mean, obviously the movie focuses on him the whole time.
Right.
But I started to like some of the other interactions in it. Like I like his friend as the football coach, and he's a
Yep.
pretty funny guy.
Mhm.
I like the strained relationship he has with William
His
H.
wife?
Macy's character, the principal, who's
Yeah.
constantly trying to get rid of him.
Mhm.
Yeah, and the wife and the son is an interesting one because like he's a music teacher raising a deaf son.
Right.
You know, like
It's
you're
like
somebody who loves,
crushing.
you know, like how do you make that work? And then he does the
Mhm.
whole song for the kid at the end.
Mhm.
So overall, I thought it was a pretty good movie. In terms of realism, there are a few storylines that kind of take me out of it, like the one with the student who has a crush on him, and he actually thinks about like going to New York with her.
Right.
And
But
you know,
I liked the connection he made with Alicia Witt's character, right? Who was just ready to give up on playing the clarinet, and he's
mhm.
like, "No, no, 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 let's relax." You know, it's like, "Do you enjoy it?" You know, and she's like, "I want to. I just." He's like, "All right, well, play as if you want to enjoy it." And then she comes back at the end, and I think she's a senator or
She's like the
governor or something.
senator or the governor or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that there are some good storylines in it. Like I like the one with the football player that he
Hmm.
teaches to play the drums just because like he needs something like an elective or something for college. And
Yeah.
then a few scenes later, you find out he was killed in Vietnam, and he uses that as a lesson for another student.
Mhm.
The one with the girl that like has the crush on him was going to New York, and he like helps her go to New York, and then the wife sees the song that he's writing for her, and like all that just was like a little like much for me.
Right.
Yeah,
So like
as in realistic, I'm not buying it.
I'm not
As a
buying that particular storyline. I'm not buying a lot of the other
Happens
ones.
all
I'm
the
fine
time.
with. Yeah, I would give Mr. Holland's Opus probably like a 3.5.
Yeah,
You
three and
know,
a half
had
sounds about
I give
right.
it a
realist.
4. I like
I
it.
just feel like it's not realistic enough to be a 5, but it's not terrible.
Right.
That takes us to some movies about police, fire, and paramedics. The first one I have on there is The Departed, which is all about the police.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I love this movie. It's one of my favorites. It's an Oscar winner for Best Picture. Won Scorsese his first directing Oscar finally. In terms of realism, I give it a 2
Hmm.
because it's crazy how like things play out in this film and all the like double crossing and Martin Sheen getting thrown
Well,
off a roof and nobody gets in trouble for it. Like,
well, think about it. If you actually did a movie about real police work, no one would go watch it.
the other thing is like he's undercover for something like 2 years, and it's like I don't know how realistic the undercover story is because I'm not a cop. So,
Right.
in terms of entertainment and drama and acting performances, I'd give it a 5. But in terms of
Yeah.
like realism of the police profession, I'm
3?
probably gonna say a 2.
2.
Yeah.
Two or 3. How about Backdraft?
I love this movie. And I don't know the element of realism or not. I really enjoyed Kurt Russell
Mm-hmm.
and Glenn Scott, you know, and the connection that they have. It's two brothers, one brother who didn't want to fall into the family business of becoming a firefighter, one who was like meant for it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of butt heads along the way. And I believe the basis of it really is they're trying to solve the mystery of these fires, these backdraft fires, these intentional elements of arson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
That
it's William Baldwin.
what's
It's the
that?
brother.
It's
William Baldwin.
William Baldwin.
Oh yeah, but Glenn Scott was the uncle, the father figure to them both. I forgot which
Yes.
Baldwin it was. Did I say
So-
Alec?
Which
Did I?
one?
Kurt Russell and William
Yeah.
Baldwin play the brothers.
Right.
De Niro
Yeah.
is like the chief or the lieutenant or something.
He was the arson investigator.
Donald Sutherland's in it. Scott Glenn plays,
Mhm.
like you said, the father figure character.
Yeah.
Got one of your girls in it, man. Jennifer Jason Leigh.
Yeah.
Rebecca De
Rebecca
Mornay.
Mhm. Rebecca De
Mornay,
Mornay.
So
I just really enjoyed the mystery of it, and then it ties back to like funding. I think, doesn't it? Isn't it like they're getting rid of they're cutting back on the amount of firehouses within Chicago because Chicago.
That's a realism.
Yeah,
That's a
and
realism.
they cut down on it, and because of it, it's not like the fires decrease. It's just they're shorthanded. They have to struggle with more. They end up losing more of their brethren. and it's shady, it's seedy, you know.
Mm.
So I liked it. This was one of Ron Howard's first movies, I want to say.
I always think of my uncle Rico was a firefighter, and he always said like he loved the movie from like an entertainment standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
but from as a firefighter himself, he would always pick out the things that like weren't real
Mm-hmm.
or couldn't happen or whatever. And so I always think of it like in that term. So for realism's sake, I'm going to say like a 3.
Mm-hmm.
But it is still an entertaining film.
Yeah, 3, I would say.
Oh, between the 4 and the 5. 4.5 for me.
We're not talking about how enjoyable. We're talking about how realistic.
Well, it's okay if he thinks it's realistic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But that thing you said about like them cutting back on like the firehouses, like
That's real.
that's a real thing. Like my uncle, right around the time he retired, was when Philly was cutting back, and I remember the station that he worked at for like 30-something years. Their response time went from like 3 minutes to like 10.
Oh, wow.
Because they had so much more ground they had to cover.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame. The last one I have on here is Copland, which is a stacked cast, man. So Copland is about a sheriff of a suburban New Jersey community populated by New York City police officers. He slowly discovers that the town is a front for mob connections and corruption in the police department. Listen to this cast: Sylvester Stallone, Harvey Keitel, Ray Liotta, Robert De Niro, Janine Garofalo, Robert Patrick, Michael Rappaport, Annabelle Sciorra, Frank Vincent, who was on the Sopranos, Edie Falco. I mean, this is like a stacked cast.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because it's a movie where Sylvester Stallone is the star in a dramatic role, not something you normally see him in. It's not an action film. Acting up against guys like De Niro and Liotta and Keitel and holding his own. And kind of showing that he actually could act at one point in his career. I remember he gained weight for it. Like he actually has like a beer belly in the film. Yeah. Sometime in the 70s, police officers from New York wanted a safe haven to live away from the dangers of the streets of New York City. This is when they established Copland, a small New Jersey town in Garrison, New Jersey. Freddie Heflin, who has always admired the New York cops and wanted to be one, but because he was deaf in one ear, was prevented from achieving that goal. Instead, he becomes sheriff of Garrison Township. Recently, there have been a dark omen surrounding the NYPD, and Freddie is now investigating on this case. Internal Affairs Officer Mo Tilden, which is played by De Niro, is also on the case and asks Freddie for help, but Freddie cannot. Freddie suspects that New York City cop named Ray Donlin might be one of the many cops who is corrupted by the mob and other criminals. Now Freddie must find a cop who is nicknamed Superboy, who could testify against Donlin and protect him before Donlin finds that guy and kills him. So it's like a cop drama, thriller, mystery, kind of thing like that. But it was interesting. I remember going to see it just because I saw all the actors who were in it, and I'm like, shit, I got to give this a shot. It's a pretty good film. Realistic wise, I think there actually is a little like township of cops, New York cops that like live in this little town together in like North Jersey. I don't think mob corruption is rampant in that little town, but
Yeah.
So this is probably a 3 for realism from me.
Okay.
Can we go back real quick? Kev, you said something that you thought that Backdraft was one of Ron Howard's first films.
I thought it might have been one of his because it is an earlier movie, 95,
It's 91. 91.
Yeah. But Willow.
Really...
Yeah, no, I forgot that he did Willow too.
He did Willow, he did Cocoon, he did Splash.
Okay.
Probably like 94, 84.
Yeah.
I don't want our audience to come back.
No, I got you. The audience is definitely going to ride me harder than Mike will, so it's good. I got you,
I think he directed.
He's bringing the receipts. I appreciate Mike bringing the receipts. Thanks.
I think he's speaking of Blue Collar. I think Ron Howard directed Night Shift, which is the movie of Michael Keaton and Henry Winkler.
He did in 82.
He did. He directed that, where they play guys that work at like a coroner's office overnight, and they try to like unionize a prostitution ring.
That's realistic.
Yeah, that's blue collar right there. Shit, the movie's about prostitution. Next one I have here is farmers, contractors, skilled labor, and the first one I have on here is Goodwill Hunting, which follows a couple of good old Boston boys who work at a construction site. One of them is a genius, kind of hiding his genius from everybody. Then the story of him trying to, rise above his station in life. Will Hunting, a janitor at MIT, has a gift for mathematics but needs help from a psychologist, played by Robin Williams, to find direction in his life.
I got a number. How do you like them
I
apples?
like them apples. Touching tale of a wayward young man who struggles to find his identity, living in a world where he can solve any problem except the one brewing deep within himself, until one day he meets his soulmate who opens his mind and his heart. So now we're trying to talk about the realism of the blue collar portion of this. So as janitors and contractors and working in, construction sites and stuff, they pretty much seem pretty realistic to me. And then I think of the fact that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck wrote the script for this, and I imagine Matt Damon sitting at home going, okay, well, I'm going to star in it. So I'm playing this construction worker, and I'm a janitor at MIT, but I'm also a genius. Yeah, that's the ticket.
Yeah.
I think of him in terms of like realism of like life in South Boston and all that. Like it's fairly realistic film. So I would probably give this
I can
one.
see that. Yeah, I'd probably give it a 4.
4.5 maybe.
Mm-hmm.
The next one I struggled with too, Field of Dreams. I put it on there because he is a farmer, but then he cuts into his farm to build a baseball field for dead people.
Well, who doesn't?
Yeah, who wouldn't do that?
So I love Field of Dreams, but I'm gonna take that off the list, I think.
Yeah.
The Deer Hunter, which I put on here because it's even though it's about a group of guys that go to Vietnam for the most part, it starts with them in Allentown, where they are steel mill workers. And it shows a lot of like what their life was like before going to war. Just regular guys working at the steel mill every day and then coming home and living their normal everyday lives before getting shipped off to Vietnam, which is about as blue collar as you can get, I think. An in-depth examination of the ways in which the Vietnam War impacts and disrupts the lives of several friends in a small steel mill town in Pennsylvania. Now, in terms of the steel mill portion of this, I'm going to give it a 5. I'm ignoring the Vietnam portion of it because I don't know how realistic it is for guys to go MIA and become part of a Russian roulette betting ring.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the hardworking everyday man portion of it, I'm going to say 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay.
5 sounds good.
5 sounds good. Grapes of Wrath, 1940 Henry Fonda film, directed by John Ford, based on the novel by John Steinbeck. An Oklahoma family driven off their farm by the poverty and hopelessness of the Dust Bowl joins the westward migration to California, suffering the misfortunes of the homeless in the Great Depression.
Those are some angry grapes.
Yeah,
angry grapes.
Given this is written by Steinbeck, who also wrote the next one on our list of Mice and Men. This was like a common theme in his stories was, the struggles of the everyday person, especially during the Great Depression.
Yep.
And the hardships they face. And his books are some of the most realistic stories I've ever read, and the movies based on them are pretty much the same way. So I would have to give both of these films a 5 out of 5 for realism in their jobs. And I love Of Mice and Men. What are we gonna do, George?
A raised rabbit?
I'm gonna pet the rabbits because they're soft. And that takes us to the last portion of this. Blue collar comedies, not the tour with Larry the Cable Guy and Jeff Foxworthy, but movies about guys working blue collar jobs, but they're actually comedic films. First off, Tommy Boy. Chris Farley and David Spade playing the son of the owner of a brake pad factory in Pennsylvania, having to go around and sell brake pads around the country in order to save his company after his father passes, and the company goes into the hands of his trophy wife that he had married right before he died. The blue collar portion of it is kind of okay, kind of realistic, but it is a Chris Farley, David Spade paired comedy. I'm going to give it a 1. Mike and I had to know it. I knew Mike was giving it a 1 before I even started talking. The Full Monty. Now, this shows a bunch of guys who are struggling to find jobs in a poor North England town. And they decide to put on a mail strip review in order to make some extra scratch. But one of them worked at a steel mill. One of them works as a security guard at a department store. Another one was a office worker. They were all, they all had various jobs that were blue collar. And it's a funny film, great film, and I think it's pretty realistic, showing what, how desperate people can be when they're on the dole, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I would give Full Monty a 5 for realism.
5.
Yeah.
Men at Work.
Golf clap.
Golf clap. Story in which Emilio Estevez and Charlie Sheen, related in real life, not related in the film, play garbage men who somehow or another get caught up in a murder plot. 2 garbage men uncover a conspiracy involving illegal toxic waste dumping and decide to bring the whole operation down.
Good Lord.
Carl and James, 2 pleasant but unambitious garbage men, one evening see a neighbor get murdered, find out that it has something to do with some toxic dumping thing. I don't even know what the fuck this movie's about.
Neither did I when I watched it.
I've seen it multiple times and I couldn't tell you what this movie is about.
This could be on one of the movies you need to watch when you're inebriated.
Yeah, I'm going to give this one a 0 out of 5.
Yeah.
Works for me.
How about 9 to 5?
Work it 9 to 5
with Dolly Parton.
Well,
Well, this is another one I haven't seen in a long
I mean,
time.
I guess I enjoy it. I don't know how much rat poison the local office keeps in their cupboard, right next to the sweetener.
3 female employees of a sexist, egotistical, lying, hypocritical bigot find a way to turn the tables on him. Yeah, they try to poison him.
yeah. Well, back in that time frame, there were a lot of egotistical bigots out there.
Stars Jane Fonda, Lily Tomlin, Dolly Parton, and Dabney Coleman as the said bigot. 2. 2
2.5.
2.5. Okay.
Yeah, 2.
Clerks.
You gotta get a half for Dolly.
Clerks.
I'm not even supposed to be here.
Now, as somebody who worked in a customer service retail job for a really long time and hated it,
Mm-hmm.
or I didn't hate the job. I loved the job. I hated the people, just like Dante. I would like to give this a 5 for realism, but there's too many crazy shit things that happen in this film for it to be too realistic, like the dead guy in the toilet and the girl that fucks him.
Yeah.
I'm knocking over the casket.
Playing sports up on the roof. Yeah, no.
My mother's been fucking a dead guy for 30 years. I call him Dad. Yeah, I would say I give it a 5 for entertainment, but a 2 for realism.
Yeah.
And the last one, Police Academy.
For realism?
I give this one a 4 for entertainment because it does get a little over the top.
For realism.
And a 1 for realism.
Because they actually have uniforms.
Because of the way they handle the riot at the end, like that's. So those are just a few of the blue collar films that we came up with for this. If you think there are any movies out there that we missed, please feel free to contact us. You can email us at filmsoffermentation@gmail.com or go to one of our social sites and let us know what's a blue collar movie that you enjoy that we should have talked about on this list tonight. Mike, do you have any beer trivia or history for us this evening?
I have a beer holiday for you, gentlemen.
Beer holiday.
As of yesterday, was National Beer Lovers Day.
I had beer last night.
National Beer Lovers Day is a time to give thanks to our favorite beverage, and it falls at a fortuitous time in the season of beer. September is a month of fall harvests, celebrations, and traditionally marks the month when the weather turns cool enough to resume brewing activities after the summer hiatus. There you go, boys. National Beer Lovers Day was yesterday.
National Beer Lovers Day. I didn't even know that, and I had 2 beers last night.
I had a beer last night too. I think it was just decompressing.
Last night I was drinking the Lily Marlene from Warhorse Brewery. It's a lager dedicated to the actress Marlene Dietrich, which I've had on the show before. And
I was having a lean kugel.
I happen to have a couple in the fridge, so I had some last night. I also needed a drink last night when I go home. So how were your drinks this evening?
Mine was very caramely. Kind of like, as you said, candy Cornish.
I told you that one tasted to me. It tastes like candy corn. That beer that you have there. I had a Sam Adams Boston Lager. Can't go wrong with that.
I had a Corona Premier, which is good for the summer, and a Snowdrift Vanilla Porter, which it's way too warm for, but not bad. Definitely slowed down my consumption tonight.
Kevin, if you haven't had this caramel pumpkin, you would love it.
Well, now that my fridge is practically empty of all the summer beers, and I'm not planning on restocking summer beers, I'll be going out and getting some of my more fall and autumnal beers.
Okay.
So I'll put that one on the list to check out.
So thank you for joining us tonight for episode 120, our favorite blue-collar films. We hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast as much as we enjoyed recording it for you. Again, you can email us at filmsandfermentation@gmail.com. Let us know if there's any movies that we forgot to mention tonight. You can also find all of our links at linktree.com/filmsandfermentation. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. We're on Facebook. We're on TikTok. We're on all the sites. You can find us anywhere. You can go to our website.
We're on X.
We're on X. Fuck that. It's Twitter. We're on filmsandfermentation.weebly.com. That's WEEBLY, Weebly. That's our website. Or you can become part of the Films and Fermentation family by buying our merch at Teespring or supporting us on Patreon. Don't forget to stop by the Crossroads between Pickled and Fermented next week as we bring to you episode 121. Every season, we like to do either an actor or director deep dive. So we're going to revisit the director deep dive for episode 121, and we're going to look at the career of one Ron Howard. I'm Leo.
I'm Kevin.
I'm Mike.
Support your teachers, friends. Cheers.
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 That was directed at you, Mike.
Support
I
your
support you guys all the time.
Support your fire alarm engineer specialists.
I break your stones because I love.
I know. That's why I said Adrian made a good steak last week.
Everybody loved the steak that Adrian made.
Mike grilled it.
I'm just the one just cooking all the food, but
Yeah, Mike grilled it. Adrian marinated it, so everybody was complimenting Adrian on it, and
marinated. Nice.
And I think
she did not put the hickory flavor into it that I did with the smoke chips.
just to rub it in, I kept saying to Adrian, "Man, this steak is so good, Adrian."
Those soaked cedar planks of wood that you put down to get the smoky flavor.
I just put them in a little box and let them go.
It was a really good steak. It doesn't have to be a movie you've seen because it's just based on the synopsis and who's in it and stuff.
Okay.
The price is wrong, bitch.
If it's got Heather Graham in it, it's automatically a 2.
If it's got Heather Graham in it. But Heather Graham was in The Hangover, and that had a pretty good rating.
Well, she played the part that she is. That's it. Anything else is just...
Man, you treat Heather Graham like she stood you up on a date or something.
I feel for Heather Graham about the same way I feel about Nicolas Cage.
He's like, I was supposed to go out on a date with Heather Graham, but she was too busy fucking the fake cock on Donnie Wahlberg. Mark Wahlberg.
Actually, I probably like Nicolas Cage more than I like Heather Graham.
And what happened was he was waiting for a date, and she decided to go out with Nicolas Cage. That's why he exposed him.
I know. I actually considered for the police, fire, paramedic, blue collar films to put World Trade Center on there, but it's a Nick Cage film, so I left it off.
I'm actually looking forward to next weekend, dude. The D&D.
Yeah.
I've been working hard on that.
Yep.
I got still text freaking yell.
Do we have to, level up again, or are we good? Because that kind of that ate like an hour and a half of our time.
No, we're good. We're good right now.
Okay.
You're still in the middle of what did you guys do? Started a revolt in the castle. So.
Oh, that's right. We had the reptile people or something.
Yeah, the lizard folk.
Lizard folk.
We were like, good luck storming the castle.
Think you could help? Think it'll help?
Take a miracle.
Take a miracle.
Go away or I'll call the Brute Squad. I'm on the Brute Squad. You are the Brute Squad.
Gentlemen, I also think the equipment situation is going to get better, probably progressively, not all in one shot.
Because you're going to be stealing stuff from school?
No, I don't think I'll be stealing stuff from school, but I'm realizing for teaching the classes I'm teaching and doing what the students are supposed to be doing, my, what is this, Lenovo laptop just won't cut it. So we're probably going to upgrade to a MacBook Pro.
All right. We are going to put the microphone in front of our face so people hear us.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening!